Welcome campers to part 5 of our 2022 Eastern Sierra series. In this trip, we visit Lone Pine and explore the Alabama Hills area. We also visit the tallest mountain in the contiguous United States and picnic in an alpine forest high in the Sierra Nevada. Let's get started. We stayed at the Tuttle Creek campground just outside of Lone Pine. This is a BLM-run dry campground and costs just $8 per night. They do have water and a dump station on site, subject to winter closures. Initially, we were hoping to stay in the Alabama Hills themselves, but recent BLM changes made it more challenging to find dispersed spots there. We knew the campground would be a sure bet, and it's just a mile or so away from the entrance. Dang and I decided to take a drive up to the Whitney Portal area. Mount Whitney at 14,505 feet is the tallest mountain in the contiguous United States. The portal has campgrounds and is the trailhead if you are interested in hiking up Mount Whitney, which does require a permit. There is also a store here if you need provisions or souvenirs. It's interesting to note that Mount Whitney is just 84 miles west of Badwater Basin in Death Valley, which at 282 feet below sea level is the lowest point in North America. Looking eastward, we see the Owens Valley with the White Mountains in the background. The mountain was named after Josiah Whitney, the state geologist of California back in 1864. The Whitney Portal Road was built in 1936 by the Civilian Conservation Corps, a work relief program established during the Great Depression to provide employment to millions of unemployed Americans. That must have been really tough work back then. The Owens Valley below us has undergone significant change since Los Angeles bought up most of the water rights back in the 1930s and began diverting water to the city. The next day, my brother Mike drove down from Mammoth and joined us for a day of exploration. Our first stop was the Alabama Hills. While the road is initially paved, it quickly turns to dirt. The granite rocks were formed about 85 million years ago, and their unique shape is due to the extensive erosion that has occurred over that period. Although you might think with their eroded surfaces, compared with the sharp ridges of the Sierras behind them, that the two mountain ranges are of a different orogeny, in fact the Alabama Hills and the Sierras are the same age. In the past, camping at the Alabama Hills was managed just as much of the other BLM lands. You could disperse camp in pretty unregulated fashion. This has changed recently, and in 2022, new rules were put in place, and many areas are now off limits for camping. I think there was just too many people for the area to sustain. As you can see, there are still a few very nice spots to camp at, however. Some of the roads back here are pretty narrow. You would definitely not want to be pulling a trailer on this one. I wouldn't even want to drive our F-250 here. Fortunately, we had Mike's 4Runner, and it's quite nimble for terrain like this. At this point, we were just driving with no particular destination in mind, exploring the area. We We happened upon this site that looked like it had a huge pool manufactured out of stone and concrete. I wasn't able to find much information about it. If you know, please leave us a comment. I don't remember seeing a no camping sign here, though there might have been one. It would be a tent camping type of thing for sure. We decided to go hike around and look for arches, of which there are many. The famous arch here is Natural Arch, aka Mobius Arch, which has a nice silhouette of Mount Whitney right through the arch. Unfortunately, we saw a few large groups heading in that direction, and it seemed like it was going to be pretty crowded, so we opted out this trip. Instead, we discovered our own arches. This one we named Dang Arch. There are a lot of very cool rock formations here, and we definitely recommend you get out on foot and explore it if you can. This one is called Heart Arch. When viewed correctly, you see a heart through the arch. Figuring out how to navigate the maze back to the vehicle can be fun. Hey, here's an idea. Fall or spring are probably the best times to visit. This area in the winter can be freezing, and in the summer quite hot at over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. We probably didn't take the correct trail, but it worked okay for us. After playing around on the rocks, we decided to head up to the Cottonwood Lake basin and have a picnic. I remember my father used to come up here back in the 1960s. It's high elevation up here, over 11,000 feet. Although it was mid-fall, the weather up here was still pretty nice, especially considering the altitude. We found a table to use and had a light snack of charcuterie, cheese, and crackers. There was nobody else up here. Horseshoe Meadows is also up in this area. In fact, the road up here is named Horseshoe Meadows Road. There are quite a few trails out of this region. On the drive down, we stopped to visit Walt's Point, named after construction worker Walt Millett, who apparently died during construction of the road. This large surface has become a famous hang gliding launch point, and thermals rising up from the desert below make for ideal gliding conditions. I understand that many men's and women's world records have been recorded here. This is classic, rugged Eastern Sierra beauty at its finest. You can just see Owens Lake in the background, mostly dried up now due to the Los Angeles water diversion. Mike found a way up on one of the rocky outcroppings from which to admire the scenery. They had to cut right through these large granite rocks to make the road up here. Completed in 1967, it was not fully paved until the 80s. Fortunately, there was only one glider at this time of day, and they were miles away from us, so we could fly the drone. They had some construction happening on the road during our visit, which further narrowed the path. Heading back to camp, we decided to explore a dirt road that looked like it might wander up to the mountains. We encountered this odd little fenced-off area. We didn't stop, and I don't know what it was for. Back at the campground, Mike and I decided to explore the fishing possibilities on Tuttle Creek. Unfortunately, it was not accessible where we were scouting, which was right across from our camp spot. Other parts are probably better suited for angling. It was time to get some more drone footage of the Alabama Hills. The Alabama Hills has been the location for filming countless movies and television series. What we were not planning for is that the town was hosting their annual film festival this weekend. When we learned of that, we became concerned the region would become inundated with folks trying to find their favorite set, but it ended up not being a problem. At just about 200 miles away, the proximity to Hollywood factored strongly into the popularity of this area as a set. One of the earliest and most significant movies to be filmed in the Alabama Hills was the silent film The Roundup, directed by Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle and released in 1920. 1939's Gunga Din, an adventure film directed by George Stevens and starring Cary Grant, was perhaps one of the most well-regarded films. Django Unchained, Iron Man, and Lone Survivor are all modern popular movies that have had scenes filmed here. The list goes on. There's even a museum nearby in Lone Pine dedicated to the topic. The Alabama Hills are named after the CSS Alabama, a Confederate warship that was responsible for sinking several Union ships during the Civil War. The hills were named in honor of the ship by prospectors who were sympathetic to the Confederate cause. Other activities to do around here include hiking, mountain biking, off-roading, fishing, rock climbing, and of course photography. Famous photographers that have captured the beauty of this area include Galen Rowell, who used to have a studio nearby named Mountain Light Photography. His work is truly stunning, and it's a shame he is no longer with us. He passed away in 2002 flying a small plane not too far from here. Do check out his work if you enjoy nature photography. Being granite, these rocks make for excellent rock climbing, and some of the more popular choices are the Shark's Fin, the Cyclops, and the Folly. I'm not sure how I'd feel about climbing up a rock named the Folly. Although mostly arid, it's nice to see the occasional stream that runs through and adds a splash of green to the palette in the dry fall climate. If you visit in the wintertime, you might also add a blanket of white snow to that palette. Dinner that night consisted of remnants from our respective refrigerators. We don't normally break out the TV, but it was baseball playoffs. We were treated to a classic Sierra sunset. And the moon was quite bright as well. Good thing we were not trying to stargaze that night. In the morning, we broke camp and headed south. Rather than going back through Lone Pine, we went right on Horseshoe Meadows Road and then took Lubkin Canyon back down to the 395. I'll be honest with you, I probably wouldn't do this again with a trailer. We made it okay, but several areas were pretty tight and foliage was low-hanging. We spent a lot of time and effort in making this video, and we would appreciate your feedback. If you like this video, consider subscribing to our channel. It will help us know that our content is resonating with our audience. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next adventure.